Kwaito is a music genre that emerged in Johannesburg, South Africa, during the 1990s. It is a variant of house music featuring the use of African sounds and samples, typically at a slower tempo range than other styles of house music. Kwaito often contains catchy melodic and percussive loop samples, deep bass lines, and vocals. Although bearing similarities to hip-hop music, a distinctive feature of Kwaito is the manner in which the lyrics are sung, rapped and shouted. American producer Diplo has described Kwaito as slowed-down garage music, most popular among the black youth of South Africa. Etymology: the word Kwaito is an Isakantha term from the Gauteng townships and encompasses styles that range from Guz, Dagong, and Isgub to Swaito. The word originates from the Afrikaans kwaai, which traditionally means strict or angry, although in more common and contemporary use the word is a loose translation of the English term cool. Kwaito led a post-apartheid township subculture into the mainstream, despite the fact that the Afrikaans language is associated with the apartheid regime and racial oppression. Afrikaans words are often drawn into the Isakantha vocabulary, reshaped and used in a related and new context. Mdu Masalila, a pioneering Kwaito artist, said, "When house music got popular, people from the ghetto called it Kwaito after the Afrikaans slang word kwaai, meaning those house tracks were hot, that they were kicking." Another Isakantha word derived from the Afrikaans word kwaai is amakwaitosi, which means gangster. The popular Kwaito artist and producer Arthur Mafokata describes the relationship between Kwaito and gangsterism as music revolving around ghetto life. History. In the backdrop of a transforming South Africa, Kwaito took shape in the township Soweto at the same time Nelson Mandela took office as the first democratically elected president of South Africa. The removal of the political and economic sanctions greatly transformed the South African music industry. One of the first Kwaito singles to become a hit in South Africa was the song Kafa by artist Arthur Mafokata, which illustrated the freedom of expression resulting from political liberation in South Africa. House music arrived in Cape Town in the early 1990s at raves such as the World Peace Party and in the original venue Club Eden, and later Euphoria and DV8. This spread northward, where, in the mid-1990s, the genre was becoming popular in Johannesburg clubs such as Fourth World, and local artists fused its sound with that of South African music. Arthur Mafokata, Oskido, Boom Shaka, and Mdu Masalila were among the first artists to produce a huge Kwaito hit and popularize it in and outside of the black townships. However, it was only after 2001 that Kwaito artists and music have found the way to Europe and the United States. Newfound freedom gave South African musicians easier access to international works and a greater ability to freely express themselves. As a result, Kwaito has also been known as the expression of this new freedom, and many anti-apartheid chants have been used as lyrics for Kwaito songs. Kwaito has been called the music that defines the generation who came of age after apartheid. Its pulsing dance beat evolved from styles such as mbikanga and dance hall, as well as house and disco. Schools in the townships were unable to fund programs such as music classes to enhance the learning experience of their students. As Kwaito did not require a formal knowledge of music theory, large spaces to rehearse, and expensive instruments, it was easily accessible to individuals in these downtrodden communities. As Kwaito became increasingly mainstream in South Africa, collaborations such as between South African R&B artists Danny Kaye and Mendoza have become more common. Kwaito hits often attract a bit of media attention, as Arthur's August 2005 release Sika Lekeka did. The song was banned by SABC radio station and Arthur had to reshoot its video after several complaints from viewers who were offended by its sexually suggestive content. Similarly, the Kwaito band Boom Shaka was widely criticized by the political establishment for its rendition of the national anthem to a Kwaito beat. The Kwaito industry is growing fast and there is becoming increasingly competitive. Popular artists include Zola, Mendoza, Trompies, Mukezaki, Brown Dash, Mafuta, Spiky Ray, Masambia, Chipper, MSA Wawa, M. Shoza, Thambi Site, Thandiswa Mazawai, Bricks, TKZEE, Anathi, and the late African pop and Kwaito star Brenda Fassie. The Kwaito stars in South Africa are seen as celebrities who influence the culture, language, and economy of the nation in ways that were impossible during the years of governmentally imposed segregation. T.S. Get a Rough, Kalawe Jasmine, and Bulldogs are the main recording companies that have discovered Kwaito musicians. Jam Alley is a South African talent show that has been a venue for many young Kwaito artists like Mendoza, Masambia, and Zola, as well as other pop stars. Some Kwaito artists have even transcended a musical career. Zola, for instance, now hosts a talk show called Zola 7 on SABC1. The globalized music industry influenced the cultural evolution that was to generate Kwaito, a popular import from the USA and the UK. Hip-hop trickled through the music scene in South Africa, particularly amongst colored people, who began to identify with an American construct of blackness, as well as strong parallels between the hardship experienced in the many poor neighborhoods of South Africa and the ghettos of New York, out of which American hip-hop grew. Local flavors and additives gradually started dominating the local take on hip-hop, and Kwaito started taking shape. The development of the genre and other local sounds was given an enormous boost with one of the ANC's first legislative acts to dramatically increase the amount of private radio stations in South Africa and regulate local music quotas of 20 to 40%. As a result of this, exposure to local music, and in particular Kwaito, expanded dramatically, which made it very popular. Global media corporations own the distribution rights of much of the music in South Africa, yet market it specifically to the local youth. Kwaito in Namibia. See Namibian Kwaito. See Music of Namibia. For now, Kwaito's appeal remains largely a South African phenomenon, and it has not yet generated the kind of interest that other South African musicians have created for the country's music in the rest of the world. Kwaito has expanded to the neighboring country of Namibia, with artists like The Dog, Gaza, Matongo Family, East, Sunny Boy, and Kwana experimenting with it. Namibian Kwaito artists are determined to take Kwaito to a new level. However, Namibia lacks major distribution and publishing companies. Hopes are high that Sony Music, EMI, Universal Music, WEA and other companies will spot this new, profitable venture. GMP Records and M-Shasho Productions are the two biggest Kwaito promoting labels in Namibia. There are no major collaborations between artists of Namibia and South Africa, although of certain B.O.G. was featured on a bonus track to Zola's Umdlewemb album. The song was produced by Elias Newton of Namibia. Gaza is one of the first from the to collaborate with South African counterparts. He has worked with DJ Cleo, Mendoza, Zola, Brown Dash and Blexum. The Dog has been on shows in South Africa in the past years and has also worked with various others. politics. While many assert Kwaito's apolitical character, it is worthwhile to note that a refusal to deal with the contemporary realm of politics is an extremely political statement that denounces the political status quo. In the words of renowned Rastafarian teacher Leecham Tufani Samij, whether you deal with politics or not, politics will deal with you. The statement that one does not deal in politics is in effect a political statement, while a notion in reference to a Jamaican cultural context. This concept remains true throughout a world of oppression and responsive conscientious subjection. Kwaito is often thought of as a means of recreation and escapism, as a genre that looks to the future instead of to the past. While apartheid is no longer in place, South Africa continues to be riddled with social problems that demand to be addressed in the realm of culture creation. HIV, AIDS and the increase in violent crimes since the end of apartheid are among the problems facing the youth of South Africa. In other words, the absence of apartheid-related subject material in Kwaito songs should not be seen as an absence of a political awareness and activism, but rather as a shift in socio-political focus. Kwaito artist Oscar Warner recalls, "We used to do tracks where we would ask why is the divorce rate so high? Why are little children being found in shebeens drinking?" The aftermath of a system of racial subjugation that was in place for centuries is equally demanding of attention as the atrocities that occurred during apartheid. Many have noted that the lyrics of Kwaito songs are apolitical because it mostly helps to create dance-oriented music. The listeners had pointed out that in many cases, Kwaito songs use catchy phrases. Gavin Steingo gave an example in his article South African Music After Apartheid. Kwaito, the party politic, and the appropriation of gold as a sign of success, by saying that there was not a political view in the first song of Mando's album because Godiva kept repeating "Cyborg, move your skeleton" throughout the whole song. On the other hand, according to Simone Swink's article, Kwaito, much more than music, it is impossible to talk about Kwaito music without referencing the political history of South Africa. He notes that Kwaito music started off with the first democratically elected president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. He continues saying that it was very hard for black South African artists to get signed in the music business before. Gavin Steingo did state that most Kwaito is overtly political, even if it seems like it is not. He said that it was more of an anti-political situation for the artist than apolitical because the youth of South Africa desire to disengage from the long years of oppression and political protest of the apartheid era. Therefore, Kwaito music represents the refusal of politics. It has also been noted that there are some Kwaito songs that reflect an artist's political view because there are some artists that rhyme, chant, or sing about explicitly political and ideological issues. However, there are cases when people say Kwaito that they refer only to the apolitical variety. Characteristics. This genre of music started emerging in the 1990s. It is a mixture of a number of different rhythms, from Marabi of the 1920s, Kwela of the 1950s, Mabikanga, Maskandi of the Hostel Dwellers, bubblegum music of the 80s, and Imabongo. Great South African music legends such as Miriam Makeba and Brenda Fassie have influenced Kwaito. At times the use of styles drawn from the African diaspora's hip-hop, dub, jazz and UK house is evident. The Kwaito sound originated from the use of European instruments that black African laborers had at their disposal after gold was found in Johannesburg. Another common characteristic is the dialogue between a man and a woman, with the woman largely repeating the man's lines. It is predominantly dance music with light subject matter. Kwaito is also usually not sung, but is usually rhythmic speech. Kwaito performances require the audience to interact through verbal responses. This is done in a call-and-response manner. The artist engages the listener, who in turn listens attentively and responds when required. It is also sung in one of South Africa's languages, which include Afrikaans, Zulu, and English. This makes it even more popular with its audience. Instrumentally, Kwaito music is easily recognized for its use of slowed-down house music beats, with the kick drum emphasizing each beat in the 4/4 time signature, which is commonly called 4 on the floor. Although it draws its most noticeable characteristics from house music, Kwaito also draws upon the musical landscape that was popular in South Africa during the early 1990s, which included disco, hip-hop, and contemporary R&B, among other genres. One characteristic that still is up for debate is whether or not to consider Kwaito a mainly South African phenomenon. While many believe that it is a distinctly homegrown style of popular dance music that is rooted in Johannesburg urban culture and features rhythmically recited vocals over an instrumental backing with strong bass lines, it is still argued whether or not this is actually true because of how recently the music has hit the scene and some of the inspirations from which it is gathered. The debate is that it is largely influenced by music types from the United States of America or the United Kingdom. Therefore, some people believe, even though the roots of it are based in the movements by Mandela and the upheaval at the time, that it is not fully of South African origin. We can see the influence that American hip-hop music has had on Kwaito most visibly in the use of gold as a symbol of power. Kwaito artists will wear gold and diamonds, completely ignoring its gruesome history and connection to South Africa, in order to portray a rags-to-riches story like many hip-hop artists do. Consumption of gold and diamonds, while at the same time saying you represent your people, is very similar to the problematic rhymes of many American hip-hop artists who glorify the drug trade but claim that they want to improve the living standards in their communities. Furthermore, many Kwaito artists would sell the records out of the trunk of the cars, a long-honored underground form of selling records that was common among many fledgling hip-hop artists. It is also important to incorporate the attitude that Kwaito musicians have. Many critics have a very biased and Western point of view on the genre. Kwaito rose from a ghetto culture, and most critics always look at Kwaito in a cultural studies context rather than looking at the ethnomusicology side. What makes Kwaito stick out is the fact that the music is always associated with a cultural context that brings out some extra meanings and messages. Furthermore, Kwaito is considered by some critics as the aggressive township music. In South Africa, some Kwaito music producers say that the genre is comparable to hip-hop. It is only comparable because it has become more than just a genre of music but rather a movement in which people can create their own identities with their own values. As Thokozani M.H. Lambie states in his article Kwaito Fabulous, in Kwaito music, the emphasis lies not in the poetic essence of the lyrics but rather in the instrumental arrangement and the danceability of the composition. Therefore I disagree with writers such as Maria McCloy, the author of Kwaito, Its History and Where It's At Now, who criticize Kwaito, claiming that very little time and effort is put into Kwaito production. This criticism overlooks the music's multiple social contexts such as parties, street bashes, and clubs. These are social venues where people are more in pursuit of leisure than engaging in intellectual discourse. Ironically, not only does Kwaito resist a sense of Western-based oppression by remaining apolitical, but it also resists trends and Western influence in and of itself via mode of production. Kwaito, as M.H. Lambie affirms, has remained the music of its people, which is the music of the South African youth after the struggle who wish to pursue rest and relaxation as opposed to dwelling on the past. The term Kwaito is a clear sign that oppression is not something to be, or that will be forgotten. The danceability and poetry inherent to Kwaito, however, shows a reversion to better times, to cultural integrity. Through Kwaito music, artists and youths collaborate to create, through music and dance, a realm where the struggle does not exist. Impact and cultural significance. Kwaito is a form of self-expression and a way of life. It is the way many South Africans dress, speak, and dance. It is a street style as lifestyle, where the music reflects life in the townships, much the same way hip-hop reflects life in the American ghetto. As a result, the growth of Kwaito in post-apartheid South Africa has changed not only the music scene but many urban cultural aspects as well. The fashion industry has boomed all over the country, with urban apparel designers such as Stone Sherry, Lokshan Kalkar, and Sun Goddess setting trends based on those trends emphasized by Kwaito artists. YFM, a youth radio station launched in Gauteng in 1997, has become the most widely listened to urban youth radio station in the country, adhering to the principle of giving the youth the license to create its own identity. After having been rejected by major record labels of the apartheid era, many independent Kwaito labels emerged such as Kalawa, 999, and MDU Music. These labels produced myriad employment opportunities for young black producers, engineers, and attorneys in the music industry and, more importantly, has provided young black people with a source of financial gain and dignity. Furthermore, Kwaito has strengthened social integration, while promoting South Africa internationally through successful overseas tours by artists such as Bongo Maffin, TKZee, and Boom Shaka. Kwaito has gained a huge following with older black people who grew up on protest songs, as demonstrated by President Thabo Mbeki when he performed the Seguka dance with Kwaito artist Mkhize during his song Seguka Namadola at the 2003 Freedom Day celebrations. This marked a huge change in the way people envisioned Kwaito, engendering a more widespread commercial audience. There has been ongoing debate as to whether Kwaito is a form of South African hip-hop, or if the music is in its own unique category. There are many ways to evaluate this according to researcher Charlene Swartz, who says that in addition to the musical attributes of Kwaito, it is important to look at production, consumption, and culture. While some say that Kwaito is a form of hip-hop, Schwartz argue that instead, Kwaito is to black South Africans as hip-hop has been to African Americans. In her article Is Kwaito South African Hip-Hop?, Schwartz clarifies that Kwaito, like hip-hop, has become more than music. It provides youth with the means for creating an identity, establishing new societal norms and economic opportunities. Quote, additionally, the Kwaito artist Zola alludes to the idea that Kwaito is a native South African genre in the documentary Sharp Sharp, when he explains how Kwaito is a combination of music that comes from ancient Nigerian drumming patterns and poetry that comes from the streets of the township. He ultimately parallels the Kwaito movement to the hip-hop movement and others by saying, "I'm fighting the same struggle my brothers in the States, and all over the world are fighting." Lambie's Kwaito Fabulous highlights that hip-hop and Kwaito are both genres of the African diaspora, yet he points out the similarities do not provide a causal relationship between the two. Yes, both cultures grew out of black oppression by whites, and in a world where consumer culture has reached a global level, Kwaito cannot claim to be completely free of hip-hop's influence. On the other hand, Kwaito is unique due to its integration of African language and instruments, and most importantly because of the distinctly South African political, social and economic conditions in which Kwaito was born. A Newsweek report claims Kwaito is South Africa's answer to hip-hop music, and is different for it incorporates a slowed-down house beat with jazz, blues, R&B and reggae. Even the very title of a report on CNN.com, Kwaito, South Africa's hip-hop, calls the relationship between the two genres into question, and only likens them because both music styles have their own subcultures. The development of Kwaito has had a significant impact on South African culture and economy. It has become mainstreamed and features in everything from television and radio to fashion. Half of the South African population is under 21 years of age, therefore, youth culture is very important to the nation's economic prosperity. Kwaito provides an opportunity for the nation's youth to produce and sell something they enjoy, all the meanwhile making a profit. This can especially be seen in the fashion industry, where several Kwaito clothing lines have emerged, including Stone Sherry and Black Coffee label. When Kwaito first emerged in the early 1990s, the look was based around street threads and floppy Kangol hats. Today it is a blend of black urban style and modern influences, though there is a fear of gimmicky marketing and loss of authenticity in the Kwaito music industry. This will not occur so long as the industry remains controlled by the South African youth. Kwaito did come from the first black-owned record companies in South Africa. The music will continue to be profitable to the country as a whole as well as the people, as long as it remains a voice for the emerging middle class. Kwaito music, in its most popular form, has made a statement by expressing the shift in interest by South African youth taking an apolitical stance in the post-apartheid era. In a sense, by rejecting and negating politics, they were making a political statement. However, the overwhelming message that is being expressed in the music and culture surrounding Kwaito is one of just wanting to have fun. This new sentiment portrays the desire of South African youth to diverge from the years of oppression and disempowerment under apartheid laws. The fading of these apartheid laws permits them to spend a night in a club rather than under a curfew. Therefore, the lyrics of many popular Kwaito songs focus on dancing and reflect the attitude of having fun for the sake of having fun, rather than engaging in the political issues of the time. The apolitical stance of Kwaito, however, has been seen by older generation South Africans as a sign of South African youth losing touch with important political struggles that have occurred in the country. As a result, these critics of Kwaito claim that Kwaito is losing its purpose. Artists of Kwaito, however, claim that the time has come to use Kwaito as a vehicle to celebrate the freedom South Africans have attained, leaving artists free to sing about other matters that are important to South African youth. Apolitical Kwaito in this sense relates to hip-hop, as it is now a form of entertainment. Though hip-hop from America has enjoyed international success and has been embraced by Africans, Kwaito has yet to gain recognition in the U.S., arguably because of the language. The language of Kwaito gives a Kwaito a sound that sounds messy, or unlike mainstream party music. As a result, Kwaito remains most likely to be heard in South Africa. There are a few problems that can be seen in Kwaito. Kwaito has not been very productive in providing gender representation. It seems to be a male-dominated field. Another con associated with Kwaito, according to Thokozani Umhalambi's article Kwaito Fabulous, is that Kwaito has been criticized for its deficiency of freshness and innovation, as well as too many pre-recorded backup tracks that are used during live concerts. Kwaito is the scene as the true rapper hip-hop of South Africa. The music contains messages of politics and things happening in the world, country or streets. Although some Kwaito music talks about just gangsters or violence, it is not depicted as fake hip-hop. Underground Kwaito is seen as fake rap in South Africa, while commercial rap is viewed as the true real rap and hip-hop.